Welcome to East Alabama Today, featuring topics, events, and interesting people from all over East Alabama. Hosted by Carl Brady. Now, let's get right to the show. Here's Carl Brady.
Hello, everyone. Welcome into East Alabama Today. I'm Carl Brady. Thanks for being with us on today's program. As always, we need to start you off with a little contact information for the show so you know how to get in touch with us if you have an idea for East Alabama Today. Fairs, festivals, special events, things that are going on all throughout our community, the 9-county coverage area that we have. You guys are our eyes and ears out on the street, so you need to let us know what's happening in your community, in your neighborhood. Like we said, fairs, festivals, special events, things that are going on with your church or your civic organization or your charity event. Let us know about it here at TV24 by sending me an email. cbrady@tv24.tv. That's the email address to use. And we also want to know about the interesting people who live in your community. Maybe you know someone who's a writer, an artist, or a musician. Maybe they have an odd or an interesting hobby. Do you think they'd be a great guest for the program? That's exactly who we're looking for. So send me their information as well. Again, to cbrady@tv24.tv. And remember just to check out our website when you get the opportunity, tv24.tv. We have an on-demand section there. So if you miss East Alabama Today, or would like to go back and review some information on one of the programs that you've seen, just go to the on-demand section of the website, click on East Alabama Today, and there you'll see several weeks worth of archived programs that you can watch there in the convenience of your home, right on your computer at whenever, anytime, night or day that you want to see it. You don't have to wait for it to appear on TV. So check that out at tv24.tv. We'll be back in just a moment with a very important show today in the aftermath of a tornado and storms that hit the East Alabama area just a few weeks ago. And we'll talk about that when we come back, so stay with us. Hello, everyone. Welcome back into East Alabama Today. Again, I'm Carl Brady, and we welcome you to the program. Today, an important show today. If you or someone you know suffered from some damage from the tornado that hit in the Etowah County area around Sardis or Smith Institute, or any of the other storm-related problems that occurred in several Alabama counties, you'll want to watch this show today, because today we have with us representatives from the Federal Emergency Management Agency and from the U.S. Small Business Administration to talk about disaster assistance. So let's introduce them right now. Beverly McDonald from the SBA. Nice to meet you. Glad to have you on the show. And Nate Custer from FEMA. Nate,
thanks for having me.
Well, one thing, tell us a little bit about these storms. Let's kind of back up and give a reminder. It was April the 28th?
April the 28th, and they were scattered from down in the Gulf Shores to over near the Georgia line, Lee County, and then up in this northern and East Alabama area. So there were 9 counties that ended up being included in what we call a presidential disaster declaration by FEMA. And that opens up individual assistance, and also there's a number of counties beyond that that are qualified for what's called public assistance. That's damage sustained by the state and local governments and certain nonprofit organizations. But the individual assistance is what affects the residents, and that's what we are here for, to help them and to get them registered if they had any kind of damage, and get them hopefully some assistance from FEMA.
Absolutely, and we've done news stories. We've talked about the getting in touch with disaster assistance through websites, phone numbers. We'll give you those websites and phone numbers again, and talk about the different kinds of assistance that are available through FEMA and through the SBA. And the Small Business Administration comes in times of disaster as well. We hear FEMA and emergency management when we think about that, and then the Small Business Administration comes in with assistance as well. What is the SBA role in the aftermath of such storms?
Well, basically, if you have homeowners insurance and you have damage sustained by the federally declared disaster, what FEMA does is refer you over to SBA. And SBA will go with you through the process as far as your insurance and everything else. And a lot of times your insurance comes up short. When your insurance comes up short, then that's where SBA comes in to actually give you the low interest rate loan, which is really a disaster related loan, to help you actually do your repairs or your replacements on your personal property, home, business, even for renters.
And so it's not all about business, even though the word business is in the name. You're not only helping businesses.
Right. We help, like I said before, we help homeowners, okay, with their home and their personal property or contents. We help renters with their personal property as well as their vehicle. And that's at the 2.1% interest rate because it is a disaster-related loan.
How quickly do you guys come into an area and start working?
As soon as the declaration has been posted.
And FEMA, even when there appears to be an oncoming severe weather threat, they may put a few people into these states that could be affected already there and go to the state or sometimes local emergency operating centers. And so they're there ready, rather than waiting for a disaster to occur and then have to get geared up and mobilized and get people in. We have advanced teams that actually show up before anything happens.
So that you can be on site as soon as necessary.
Exactly.
That's right. And then they will, as the need develops, call in more people. If there's a presidential declaration, they will be hundreds of people that we have now handling the situation here in Alabama.
In the immediate aftermath, you guys set up recovery centers in the actual affected communities, like in Smith Institute, at Bethlehem Baptist Church, and at Sardis City Hall, and what you were doing there. But now that those centers are closed, people can get assistance through websites. They can go online and apply for assistance and call the 800 number. And I think we have those that will show throughout the program. So when I've been affected by the storm, and I decide to apply for assistance.
Yes.
What's the process? What happens? What do I need to do?
First things first, register with FEMA. You need to, if there is no recovery center, call the 800 number or go online to disasterassistance.gov. Okay, and just give in, it's just brief information. It's not a lot of information, it's brief information. Just give them the information. They will in turn give you a FEMA number, okay? And then a couple of days later is when the FEMA inspector will give you a call and actually come out and inspect the property and let you know exactly what you qualify for at that time. And like I said before, if you have insurance, FEMA will turn you over to SBA, and SBA will walk you through the process. Now, mind you, if SBA finds that you cannot afford a loan, or a loan will create a hardship for you or your family, then we will in turn send you back to FEMA, and FEMA will notify the other charitable organizations and everything else in regards to actually assisting you in making your repairs.
What we do in a case like that, where a loan just wouldn't work for an individual but has unmet needs, is what's called other needs assistance. That may be some medical expenses related to the disaster. It could be tools or special clothing needed for a job, a child's computer needed for school that was lost in the storm. And then beyond that, and whether you involve with the SBA or not, there is disaster unemployment assistance. Some people are out of work because their place of work is damaged or destroyed, not functioning. They could be self-employed and not able to have a place to work out of. They may have an office in their home that is not functioning. So the Alabama Department of Labor administers that. FEMA provides the funding for it, but it's disaster unemployment assistance, and that's just another phase of the various ways that the federal government comes in along with our state and local partners and tries to get people back on their feet and functioning again.
I think that's something that people don't always think about initially, is the unemployment part of it. But if your house is completely destroyed in a tornado, your first thought the next morning is not getting up and going to work. You got to find a place to live. You got to make sure your family's taken care of. So you can miss 2 or 3 weeks worth of work while you figure out what the next step in your life is.
And you may not realize right away that you need to register with FEMA. You're preoccupied with all of a sudden a debris pile, and your home is in shambles, and you're trying to figure out how to clean that up. Where are you going to spend the night over the next several weeks, since you can't live in your home? But that is where FEMA comes in, and we not only rely on television, radio, newspapers, and whatever, and websites to get the word out about registering. We have teams, they're called disaster survivor assistance teams, and they go out into these damaged neighborhoods. They have mobile tablets with them, and they seek out people, they talk to people. Well, have you registered? Well, we can register you right on the spot with this tablet. Because there is a lack of power, a lack of telephone service in some of these neighborhoods, and people are just in a state of shock often because of what's happened to them. But we do this outreach to try to get to the people and get them into the FEMA system and the SBA system.
Let's take a quick commercial break and do that right now. I'll be back in just a moment. We'll continue talking about FEMA and SBA disaster assistance and how it applies to you right here in the local community if you were affected by the storms back in April. We'll have that coming up in just a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back into East Alabama today. We're talking with representatives from the Federal Emergency Management Agency and the U.S. Small Business Administration. We have Nate and Beverlyn with us, and we're talking about how you can get disaster assistance in the wake of storms, tornadoes, floods, and Nate, we saw in the 9 counties that were declared in the disaster zone, or that were declared in the disaster, we saw a wide range of different weather problems.
That's right. It seemed to jump in and out, and one residence might be fine, and 2 doors down, major damage. It was just kind of a spotty thing, and as I said before, these 9 counties range from down on the Gulf Coast up to the Tennessee border with limestone.
Right down to the Gulf Coast, there was a lot of flooding issues down in that area, and then, like we always see here in East and Northeast Alabama, we got to deal with tornadoes.
Tornado-prone area. Since I've been here, I think it was some news stories that came out that the Huntsville, northern Alabama area is probably number 1 over the years.
We see a lot of them. Even the Smith Institute community that was hit in northern Etowah County had been almost a year to the day that it had been hit by another tornado last year. It had just right about a year that followed almost the same path. It actually had a crisscross kind of pattern. So some of the people who were affected in this storm in April were still in the recovery process from the storm of last year. And that makes it extra difficult to try to recover.
You wonder how they go along month after month in a situation like that. It's sort of it's just a huge impact to have it happen again. Absolutely.
And let's talk about first responders. You were talking about getting crews on the ground who go around and talk to people. There are immediate needs in a situation like that. If your roof is off your house, we see the blue tarps everywhere, that kind of thing. What do you guys work with first responders? And I know in a lot of cases you have to wait till the disaster declaration is made. Right. So that initial first few days, is that just first responders, and how do you...
We have a saying that all disasters are local. I mean, they start where they start, and the local first responders are right there on the scene, and often the Red Cross or the Salvation Army, they're opening up shelters, they're taking care of the immediate needs. Once the disaster comes along and the local officials are somewhat overwhelmed, they'll turn to the Alabama Emergency Management Agency, turn to the state for help, maybe for supplies, for generators, for for food and ice or cots to put in shelters. And once the state sees that it's a lot of needs to deal with, then they will in turn talk to FEMA about it. And then it could lead to a request by the governor to do what we call preliminary damage assessments. That's where we go out and evaluate the extent of the damage in affected counties, the level of insurance coverage, whether, as you just mentioned earlier, the area has gone through another disaster in recent years, and if they still may be recovering from that. And that all goes, that information is done quickly. People fanning out through these neighborhoods, it's sent up through the state to the governor's office, and then the governor decides whether there is a need for a presidential disaster declaration. And sometimes, in a huge disaster, we have what's called an expedited declaration, where we don't have to take the time of a day or two or three to do these preliminary damage assessments. You fly over an area like the Oklahoma tornadoes last year, the Alabama tornadoes 3 years ago. You fly over in a helicopter. All it takes is one look, and it's obvious that the area has been overwhelmed and needs some federal assistance.
And you mentioned earlier that part of the assistance you guys can provide is assistance to governments and nonprofit organizations, because they end up with huge expenditures as well. You know, local governments, you got to remove the debris that's put out on the side of the road. You have debris removal. You have first responder situations with your waterworks and sewer board and your building departments, your highway departments, clearing roads and unexpected expenses that, in the current situation that most counties and cities are in, you take a huge financial hit on something like that. It could really have a devastating impact on the community from the government side of things.
That all comes under the category of PA, public assistance, which is aid to the state and local governments and certain nonprofits. You mentioned debris removal, emergency protective measures, overtime that's needed, crews that have to go out and set up barricades, close off flooded streets, things like that. And then you have damage to water treatment facilities, water purification plants, schools, government buildings. So there's a wide range of things that all of a sudden these governments are getting hit along with the individual residents.
And Beverly, so let's talk about these SBA loans. They're available for businesses, for nonprofits, for people's personal homes, and for personal property, things that aren't covered by insurance. You guys can help fill in the gap between where insurance stops and what you've got to do. There's some numbers there: $200,000 for primary homes, $40,000 for personal property, and things like that. Talk about how all that works together.
Okay, if your home is damaged and you have insurance, like I said before, if your insurance comes up short, SBA gives you the loan for your actual uninsured, uncompensated losses. We don't just give you a loan, we go out and assess your damage, and then minus insurance is what your loan amount would be. The shortage, basically. Okay, when it comes to the renter, it's the same thing. If you do not have renter's insurance, we will assist you with a personal property loan or your contents. And like I said before, including your vehicle, if your vehicle was uninsured. See, a lot of people only have basic, just let me drive insurance. You know, not full coverage anymore. Full coverage is rather expensive, so a lot of people don't have full coverage. So if your vehicle was damaged in the storm and it was declared, then SBA will come along and give you a loan for the actual damage of the vehicle. That's where a lot of our loans come in, actual. See, a lot of times we tell people, don't wait for the insurance company. Go ahead, register with FEMA, and then when FEMA turns you over to SBA, fill out the application and send it back. The application is not a long, drawn-out process. It's simple. A few simple questions, and then submit it. then we will send an inspector out, that just like FEMA and just like your insurance, and they will actually assess your damage. This is where the loan amount actually comes in. Okay, so your vehicle was damaged, we give you the money, you go buy a new vehicle, and you have it at the 2.1% interest rate.
Right.
Yes.
Much better than going out for a private business loan.
Exactly. And the same way, the same thing goes when it comes to your home. Actual damages only, okay, minus your insurance money. And do not wait for the insurance company. Go ahead, get the SBA money, start your repairs, because the longer you wait, the more damage you will end up with.
That's true. If you still have leaks in your roof or
Exactly.
a big hole in your roof, you're going to continue to see continued damage the
Right.
longer you take to
You're going to be
get
dealing
it
with
fixed.
mold and mildew
Exactly.
within 24 to 48 hours.
Right.
It doesn't take a flood. This was more of a tornado than a flood, but what opened up holes in roofs, holes in the walls of these dwellings, and water got in and can get in behind furniture, and there may be mold and mildew going on that you don't realize.
Exactly.
It's a health threat. It can cause respiratory problems, vision problems. You don't want to take any chances with that, and you need to get with your local health department and get some advice maybe on how to go about cleaning it up.
Right. See, the thing is, register with FEMA, then your damage and the date of your damage has been documented. If you do not register with FEMA and you just go with your insurance company, let's say it takes the insurance inspector a couple of weeks to get there. Now, you've got this hole, you've got a blue tarp over it, but you have this hole in the roof. Now the insurance adjuster finally comes out, and it's rained a couple of more times or what have you since then, and he gives you this quote. Okay, now you call the roofing guy. The roofing guy, it takes him, let's say, a month to come out. Now let's say a couple of months have gone by. By the time the roofing guy gets up there, he finds that you have a lot more damage than originally anticipated. Now you can't go back to FEMA because the declaration is closed.
Right.
And once the declaration is closed, that's it. So you go back to the insurance company, and the insurance company questions you and says, well, how do we know that this is when the damage actually occurred?
Right. How do we know it was related to this particular storm?
Exactly.
It wasn't already there or something.
And it wasn't neglect on the homeowner's part.
Right.
So if you register with FEMA, you now have document, okay, that says this is when this damage occurred. It just so happened that it took the insurance adjuster and the roofer X amount of time to actually come in. So the insurance company cannot say neglect on your part because you actually did, say that this is when it happened.
You've got that documentation there.
And that will back you up.
That's important. One of the things that we talked about off camera, and FEMA representatives during the 2011 storms would tell me, we have a difficult time getting people, especially in Alabama, to sign up for this assistance because they say things like, my neighbor was hit worse, I'll be okay, take care of them, or in this community we take care of each other, we don't need your help. But it is important, there are important reasons to sign up even if you have a minimal amount of
Go ahead and register regardless of your walk of life, your income, and things like that. It's there for everyone to be considered on a case-by-case basis. The FEMA money is a grant. It does not have to be repaid. It doesn't affect your income taxes. You don't have to declare it as income. It will not affect any Social Security payments, Medicaid, or anything else in the way of entitlements that you may be getting from the federal government. And you have until July 1st to do it. Don't wait until July 2nd. Call 1-800-621-3362.
Right, and that is the number. You see it there on the screen. You can also go to disasterassistance.gov. The local recovery centers are already closed, but you can go to those and must get signed up by July 1st. July 1st is the deadline on that. And we need to take another quick commercial break and be back to wrap things up in just a moment. Well, there you see it, the phone number and website for disaster assistance. If you're in one of the 9 counties that falls under the presidential disaster declaration from the storms in April, then you can go to disasterassistance.gov or call the toll-free FEMA number there, 800-621-3362, to sign up for federal disaster aid through FEMA and the SBA. And a quick reminder, if you don't have a computer or access to a computer, go to your local public library. All public libraries have public computers that are hooked up to the internet that are able to be used, and you can go to the website there, disasterassistance.gov, and sign up that way. Guys, thank you so much for being here with us. This is part 1 of a 2-part series of shows because there's so much to talk about, and we'll have the rest of the show next week for you. But we'll be back and do that and talk more about disaster assistance with East Alabama Today. So thanks for joining us for today's program, and we'll see you next time.